The impossible choice. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched impossibly high, its crystalline spires disappearing into the artificial atmosphere of Station Alpha. 17-year-old Maya Chen stood at its entrance, her diplomatic trainee badge gleaming against her midnight blue uniform. She watched as thousands of alien species filed past her, each representative more extraordinary than the last. Some floating on clouds of living gas, others walking on legs of pure energy. The Council of Elders was convening for its millennial session, and Maya was supposed to be nothing more than a silent observer. Her mentor, Ambassador Rodriguez, had pulled countless strings to get her this opportunity. "Watch and learn," he'd said. "This is how the galaxy has maintained peace for 50,000 years." But that was before she discovered the encrypted message hidden in the quantum frequency of her translator. Before she decoded the warning that made her blood run cold. Before she realized that humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Council 3 decades ago hadn't been an honor, it had been a carefully orchestrated trap. Maya's hands trembled as she clutched her datapad, containing evidence that could shatter the foundation of galactic society. The Council of Elders, the supposed guardians of peace and progress, had been systematically eliminating species they deemed too innovative. Their method was elegant and terrible. Guide developing civilizations into the Council, then slowly restrict their growth through seemingly benevolent regulations until they stagnated and eventually died out. Humanity was next on their list. The warning had come from an unlikely source, a young Nixilian named Zarthi, whose species had once been among the most promising in the galaxy. Now they were nothing more than service workers, their once brilliant minds dulled by generations of Council guidance. "You must speak," Zarthi had written. "The Elders fear the voice of youth more than any weapon. They know that the young can still see truth through the fog of tradition." The massive doors of the Great Hall began to close. Maya knew that once they sealed, no one would be allowed to interrupt the proceedings for any reason. It was now or never. Her heart pounded as she stepped forward, breaking every protocol she'd been taught. The nearby guards, towering Kraxan warriors with crystalline exoskeletons, turned their sensor arrays toward her. Maya raised her voice, using the diplomatic projection techniques she practiced countless times. "I invoke the right of emergency address." The words echoed through the hall, causing several energy-based beings to flicker in surprise. The right of emergency address was ancient, nearly forgotten, but still valid under Council law. It allowed any sentient being, regardless of status, to speak before the full Council if they believed the galaxy itself was at risk. The guards moved to stop her, but they couldn't, not without violating the very laws they were sworn to protect. Maya strode forward, her steps echoing in the sudden silence. Thousands of alien eyes, sensor arrays, and consciousness matrices focused on her. At the far end of the hall, the Council of Elders sat in their elevated chambers. They were the oldest beings in known space. The Eternals, the quantum minds, the living stars. Beings so ancient they had transcended their original forms. They looked down at Maya with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. "You dare invoke the right." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, the collective speech of the Elders. "You, a child of a species that still measures time in mere centuries." Maya squared her shoulders. "I dare because I must. Because someone has to speak for the young, the growing, the changing. Because I have evidence of the Council's true purpose, not to guide, but to control, not to nurture, but to call." She raised her datapad, projecting its contents for all to see. Statistics, trends, hidden directives, a pattern of devastation disguised as progress. The hall erupted in murmurs as representatives from 100 worlds recognized their own species' declining trajectories. "You speak of things you cannot understand," the Elders proclaimed, their collective voice tinged with warning. "The galaxy requires stability. Progress must be managed." "Progress isn't meant to be managed," Maya countered, her voice growing stronger. "It's meant to be embraced. Every species here was once young, once growing, once afraid but brave enough to reach for the stars. You've forgotten that fear and that courage. You've forgotten what it means to change. The evidence continued to scroll behind her, undeniable proof of the Council's systematic suppression of innovation, creativity, and growth. But Maya knew that facts alone wouldn't be enough. She needed to reach not just their minds, but whatever they had in place of hearts. Look at what we could become, all of us together. Not carefully managed gardens, but wild forests of possibility. Not a symphony where every note is controlled, but a jazz improvisation where each voice adds something new and beautiful. In the galleries, younger representatives began to stand. The Nixilians first, led by Zarthi, then others, species after species recognizing their own lost potential in Maya's words. The Council of Elders shifted uneasily in their chambers, sensing the change in the air. Maya took a deep breath, knowing her next words would either save her species or condemn her forever. I call for a vote of renewal. Not just for humanity, but for every species that wants to reclaim their right to grow, to change, to become something more than what you've planned for them. The hall exploded into chaos, but Maya stood firm. She had lit the spark. Now she could only hope it would become a flame bright enough to illuminate the galaxy's future and burn away the shadows of the past. Breaking protocol. The aftermath of Maya's declaration rippled through Station Alpha like a quantum shockwave. The Great Hall had been sealed off by cracks and guards, but that hadn't stopped the news from spreading through every conceivable channel, official, unofficial, and seemingly impossible. Even the station's ancient AI was abuzz with unprecedented activity, its crystalline corridors humming with data exchanges. Maya found herself in a small diplomatic chamber, surrounded by an unlikely alliance. Zarthi, the young Nixilian who had first warned her, sat cross-legged on a gravity pad. Beside him, a quantum youth, a being of pure energy barely contained within a ceremonial shell, flickered with nervous excitement. Representatives from a dozen other species crowded the room, most of them the youngest of their kind to ever attend a council session. "They're deliberating," said Zarthi, his silver eyes fixed on a holographic feed of the council chamber. "The elders cannot simply dismiss the right of emergency address. It's woven into the fundamental laws of the galaxy." "Laws," they wrote, Maya reminded him, pacing the room. "They can rewrite them." "Not without revealing their true nature," hummed the quantum youth, its voice a melody of mathematical precision. "The Council maintains power through the illusion of wisdom and benevolence. To openly violate their own sacred laws would shatter that illusion." Maya stopped pacing and turned to face her newfound allies. "Then we need to push harder. The evidence I presented was just the beginning. Each of your species has its own story of lost potential, of innovations abandoned, of dreams deferred. We need to gather them all." "It's not that simple," chittered Kirks, a young hive coordinator whose species had once built living ships that could cross galaxies. Now they were relegated to maintaining communication networks. "The Council's influence runs deep. Many of our own people believe we are better off under their guidance. Then we show them otherwise." Maya pulled up a hidden section of her datapad, revealing a complex network of connections. "While I was training as a diplomatic intern, I did more than just study protocol. I mapped the entire structure of council bureaucracy, every department, every regulation, every hidden channel of power." The assembled beings leaned forward, their various sensory organs fixed on the display. Maya's fingers danced across the holographic interface, highlighting key points in the vast network. "Look here, the Department of Cultural Heritage. They don't just preserve history, they actively modify it. And here, the Bureau of Scientific Development. Every breakthrough has to be approved by a committee that hasn't approved anything truly revolutionary in 10,000 years." "By the first light," whispered the quantum youth, its shell pulsing with realization. "They've built a perfect cage, and we've been maintaining it ourselves." "Exactly," Maya said. "But every cage has a weak point. And I think I've found this one's. The archive of potential futures. The room went silent. The archive was legendary. A vast repository of possible timelines, maintained by the most enigmatic of the elder species. It was said to be the source of their wisdom, allowing them to guide the galaxy along the most stable path. The archive is forbidden. Kirks chittered nervously. No one below elder status has accessed it in living memory. Maya smiled. That's not entirely true. 2 cycles ago, a human maintenance worker was assigned to update the archive's quantum cooling systems. The elders didn't think anything of it. Humans are still considered too primitive to understand their technology. But that worker was my father. She pulled up another hidden file, this one containing schematics that seemed to twist in impossible ways. He didn't understand the technology, but he did what humans do best. He got curious. He took scans, made notes, and most importantly, he found a way in. Zarthi's silver eyes widened. You're suggesting we break into the most secure facility in the galaxy? No, Maya corrected. I'm suggesting we show everyone what's in it. The archive doesn't just contain possible futures, it contains all the futures the Council rejected. Every timeline where species were allowed to grow freely, to innovate, to challenge the status quo. The quantum youth's shell sparkled with excitement. If we could broadcast those possibilities, we could shatter the Council's narrative completely, finished Kirks. Show everyone not just what was taken from us, but what we could still become. Maya nodded, but we'll need help. The archive is protected by security systems from a dozen different species, each designed to be impossible for the others to bypass. We'll need representatives from at least 7 major species working in perfect coordination. She looked around the room, meeting each being's gaze. I know it's asking a lot. If we fail, the punishment won't just fall on us. Our entire species could suffer. But if we succeed, we free the galaxy from a cage it didn't even know it was in. Zarthi said softly. I'm in. One by one, the others signaled their agreement, each according to their species' customs. The quantum youth flared bright enough to temporarily overload the room's sensors. Kirks's antennae wove a pattern that symbolized unbreakable commitment. Others hummed, glowed, or reformed their bodies into shapes of affirmation. Maya felt a weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by a different kind of pressure, the pressure of responsibility, of knowing that these beings were putting their trust in her, in humanity's capacity for changing the unchangeable. Then we begin now, she said, pulling up the archive's schematics. We have 6 hours before the Council reconvenes. 6 hours to either change history or become a cautionary tale in whatever version of it they choose to write. The beings gathered closer, their diverse forms creating a living testament to the galaxy's potential for variety and change. As Maya began to outline her plan, she couldn't help but smile. The elders had spent millennia trying to prevent exactly this kind of collaboration, this mixing of ideas and abilities. They were about to learn why that had been a mistake. The elders' game. The path to the archive of potential futures twisted through dimensions that human language had no words for. Maya's small team moved through crystalline corridors that seemed to fold in on themselves, guided by the impossible geometry of her father's maintenance schematics. Each step had to be precisely calculated. One wrong move could alert the entire security system. Zarthi led the way, his Nixilian spatial awareness allowing him to perceive the true nature of their surroundings. The quantum youth, who had introduced herself as Phi, flowed through the security fields like water through a sieve, temporarily disrupting them to allow the others passage. Kirks's hive-mind connection provided constant updates on guard patrol patterns, while 3 other species representatives maintained a complex web of sensory deception around them. Maya brought up the rear, her human mind doing what it did best. Adapting, improvising, finding patterns in chaos. The Council's security was perfect, theoretically unbreakable. But like all perfect systems, it had never needed to evolve, to change, to imagine new threats. Security nexus ahead, Zarthi whispered, his silver eyes reflecting dimensional shifts invisible to human perception. 3 layers of quantum encryption backed by temporal locks. The encryption protocols are Nixilian design, Maya said, consulting her datapad. From before your species was restricted. Can you still read them? Zarfi's face twisted with a complex emotion. They were designed by my great-grandmother. The Council. They kept her original work, even as they forced our species to forget how to create such things. His fingers traced patterns in the air, following mathematical ghosts. Yes, I can read them. But the temporal locks. Leave those to me, Phi hummed, her energy shell pulsing with contained power. My people once danced with time itself, before the Council decided such dances were too dangerous. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of countless lost innovations, forgotten dreams, and abandoned potential all around them. The archive wasn't just a repository of information. It was a monument to everything the Council had stolen from the galaxy's younger races. They worked in silence, each being contributing their species' forgotten knowledge. Maya coordinated their efforts, her human gift for improvisation, allowing her to weave their various abilities into a cohesive whole. Slowly, carefully, the archive's defenses began to yield. The final door dissolved like mist, revealing a chamber that seemed to contain the entire universe in miniature. Streams of possibility flowed through the air like rivers of light, each one representing a different potential future. The sight was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. By all that flows, Phi whispered, her shell barely containing her awe. The Council doesn't just predict futures, they actively suppress them. Look. Maya followed Phi's gesture to a particularly bright stream of possibility. Within it, she saw images of achievements that took her breath away. Living ships that could think and grow, planets transformed into gardens of conscious thought, beings of pure energy and solid matter working together to reshape reality itself. These aren't just possibilities. Kirks chittered, his antennae waving in agitation. These are futures that were actually beginning to happen. Futures the Council deliberately prevented. Maya moved deeper into the chamber, her datapad recording everything. Each stream of possibility told the same story. Species after species reaching for greatness, only to be subtly redirected, regulated, and restricted into safer, more manageable paths. We need to link this to the station's main communication array, she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite her anger. Every being in the galaxy needs to see what's been taken from them. But before they could act, a new voice filled the chamber, ancient, powerful, and terrifyingly familiar. Did you think we would not be watching our own archive, young one? The air itself seemed to crystallize as the Elder Council materialized around them. Not projections or representatives, but the elders themselves. Beings so old they had transcended normal existence. Their forms shifted between states of matter, their thoughts visible as ripples in reality. Your species always did have a remarkable capacity for interference, one elder said, its voice carrying the weight of eons. Such a pity you never learned to simply accept your place. Maya stood her ground, even as some of her companions shrank back. Our place isn't to accept, it's to question, to challenge, to change. Change, another elder mused, the word carrying millennia of distaste. Such a destructive force. We have guided the galaxy for 50,000 years, maintaining perfect balance, perfect stability, perfect stagnation, Maya countered. You've turned the galaxy into a museum piece, preserving everything in amber while life itself drains away. That's not stability. It's death in slow motion. The elders moved closer, their presence bending light and gravity. You understand nothing of death, child. We have seen civilizations burn themselves out with unchecked progress, seen species tear reality apart in their quest for advancement. Everything we have done has been to prevent such catastrophes. No, Maya's voice grew stronger as she activated her datapad's transmission sequence. Everything you've done has been to prevent change itself, because change is the one thing you can't control. But life isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to grow, to evolve, to take risks, and learn from failures. The chamber began to hum as Maya's signal reached out to every communication device on the station. The streams of possibility around them grew brighter, responding to her words, to the combined desire for change emanating from her small but diverse team. "You fear chaos," she continued. "Look at us, different species, different minds, different dreams, all working together. That's not chaos. That's harmony. Real harmony, not the artificial peace you've imposed." The elders moved to stop the transmission, but they found themselves opposed by powers they had thought long forgotten. Phase-temporal manipulations, Zarthi's quantum mathematics, Kirks's hive-mind coordination, all the abilities their species had been forced to abandon, now remembered and reborn in a moment of desperate need. Maya felt the weight of possibility pressing down around her, the future itself seeming to hold its breath. In that moment, she understood that this had always been humanity's role in the galaxy, not to be the strongest or the wisest or the most advanced, but to be the ones who never stopped asking, why not? The chamber erupted with light as the transmission reached its peak, and the galaxy began to remember what it had forgotten. Revolution of the Young. The archive chamber had become a battlefield, but not one fought with weapons. Streams of possibility warred with each other in the air as the Elder Council fought to contain the transmission while Maya and her allies worked to keep it flowing. Throughout Station Alpha, beings of all species were receiving visions of what could have been, and what still could be. "You cannot comprehend the forces you are unleashing," one of the elders boomed, its form shifting between states of matter in agitation. "The galaxy exists in balance because we maintain it." Maya stood at her console, fingers flying across the holographic interface as she worked to keep the transmission stable. Around her, her companions fought their own battles. Phi had wrapped herself around a temporal junction, her energy form preventing the elders from simply erasing the last hour from existence. Zarthi and Kirks worked in perfect synchronization, their combined abilities creating a shield of probability that even the elders couldn't easily penetrate. "The galaxy exists in stasis," Maya corrected, not looking up from her work. "And life in stasis isn't living at all. Look at these futures you've suppressed, the discoveries, the innovations, the connections between species. You're not maintaining balance. You're maintaining control." Through the station's communication networks, she could see the impact their revelation was having. In the diplomatic quarters, representatives from 100 worlds watched in amazement as they saw their species' true potential displayed before them. In the maintenance levels, workers of supposedly lesser races remembered skills their ancestors had possessed generations ago. But it was in the youth sections where the real revolution was taking place. Young beings from every species were looking at these possibilities and asking the same question: why not? "The young lack wisdom," another elder declared, its voice resonating with the frequency of dying stars. "They lack the experience to understand why such restrictions are necessary." A new voice joined the conversation, powerful, ancient, but different from the other elders. "Do they, or do we lack the courage to face change?" All activity in the chamber froze as a new figure materialized. Unlike the other elders, this one maintained a single, solid form, a crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light. Maya recognized it from her diplomatic studies. The first observer, oldest of all the elders, who hadn't spoken in public for 10,000 years. First observer, the other elders acknowledge, their forms drawing back slightly. "This does not concern. It concerns all of us," the first observer interrupted. "I have watched in silence as we transformed from guardians to jailers, from teachers to tyrants. We feared chaos, yes, but in doing so, we created something worse, an illusion of peace that slowly suffocates the very essence of life itself." The chamber hummed with tension as the first observer moved closer to Maya and her group. Its crystalline form refracted the streams of possibility around them, creating a dazzling display of potential futures. "Look at what these young ones have accomplished," it continued. "In a few hours, They have done what we claimed was impossible, united different species in common cause, bypassed our perfect security, and forced us to confront our own failures. They did not destroy or conquer. They simply refused to accept artificial limitations. Maya felt the weight of the first observer's attention turned to her. Human child, your species has been a source of constant irritation since you joined the galactic community. You question everything, challenge every restriction, and refuse to simply accept what you are told. We thought this a flaw to be corrected. And now? Maya asked, standing straight despite her exhaustion. Now I see it is exactly what the galaxy needs, not to rule. There are many species more advanced than humanity in countless ways, but to remind us all of something we have forgotten. The simple courage to ask, why not? The chamber erupted in argument as the other elders protested, their forms shifting rapidly between states of agitation. But they fell silent as streams of data began pouring in from across the station and beyond. The transmission had reached further than anyone had anticipated, and the response was overwhelming. Species after species was awakening to their lost potential. Young voices were rising up everywhere, not in violent revolution, but in quiet determination to reclaim what had been taken from them. The carefully maintained structure of galactic society wasn't being destroyed. It was transforming, evolving, becoming something new and unexpected. Maya watched in amazement as the streams of possibility in the archive began shifting, new futures blossoming into existence, even as the old controlled timelines faded away. She saw glimpses of worlds where different species worked together freely, where innovation and tradition found balance without restriction, where the galaxy was alive with the chaos and beauty of unrestricted growth. It's too late to stop it now, she said quietly to the assembled elders. The only question is whether you'll help guide this change or stand against it. The first observer's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been approval. Indeed, the age of absolute control is ending. The age of possibilities is beginning. And it started with a simple human trait, the unwillingness to accept because we said so as an answer. Around them, Station Alpha hummed with unprecedented activity as the revolution of the young continued to spread. Not a revolution of violence or destruction, but one of questions, of possibilities, of refused limitations. The galaxy was changing, one why not at a time. A new order. One standard galactic month after the events at the archive, Station Alpha had transformed beyond recognition. The once rigid hierarchy of the council chambers had been replaced by something unprecedented, a space where elder wisdom and youthful innovation worked in genuine partnership. Maya stood at a viewing window, watching ships of designs both ancient and newly imagined dock at the station's crystalline arms. Quite a change from the maintenance reports you used to file, a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to find Ambassador Rodriguez, who was trying and failing to hide his pride. Though I suspect you weren't really focusing on maintenance even then. I was maintaining something more important, Maya replied, gesturing to the scene before them. The right to grow, to change, to become something more than what others decide we should be. The station's corridors now buzzed with an energy that had been absent for millennia. Young representatives from every species worked alongside the elders, not as subordinates, but as partners in shaping the galaxy's future. The first observer had been true to its word, helping to establish a new form of governance that balanced stability with innovation. Zarthi appeared in a shimmer of quantum displacement, a technique his people had relearned from their ancestral records. The first session of the new council is about to begin, he announced, his silver eyes bright with excitement. You should see the proposals being put forward. The Crystalline Collective is suggesting a merger of organic and mineral consciousness. The Void Dancers want to establish interdimensional art galleries. Even the hive minds are exploring individual creativity. Maya smiled, remembering how different things had been just a month ago. The change hadn't been instant or easy. Centuries of conditioning didn't disappear overnight. But the simple act of showing people what was possible had sparked something that couldn't be contained. Any word from the holdouts? She asked, referring to the few elder council members who had refused to accept the new order. They've established their own enclave in the preservation sector, Kirks answered, skittering up to join them. His hive mind now pulsed with individual thoughts and variations, making his speech more dynamic and expressive. Some species have chosen to join them, preferring the old stability. And that's okay. That's the real difference, isn't it? Phi observed, her energy form swirling with complex patterns. Before, we had only one path. Now, each species, each individual, can choose their own way forward. Maya nodded, thinking of all the futures she had seen in the archive. Some had been brilliant, others dangerous, but all had been possible. The galaxy was no longer a carefully tended garden, but a wild forest of potential, where different approaches could coexist and learn from each other. The station's announcement system chimed softly, calling members to the first session of the new council. Maya straightened her diplomatic uniform, no longer a trainee's outfit, but that of a full representative. Not because of her role in recent events, but because humanity's perspective had been recognized as essential to the galaxy's future. "Shall we?" she asked her companions. Together, they made their way to the transformed council chamber. The hierarchical tiers had been replaced by a circular arrangement where all species could meet as equals. The elders who had chosen to embrace change sat among their younger counterparts, their ancient knowledge now freely shared, rather than used as a tool of control. The first observer, serving as a bridge between old and new, called the session to order. "We gather today not as rulers and ruled, but as fellow travelers on an infinite journey. The galaxy faces many challenges, some old, some new, all significant. But we face them together, with both the wisdom of experience and the courage to imagine new possibilities." Maya listened as representatives from across the galaxy presented their ideas, their hopes, their concerns. Some proposals were practical, others seemingly impossible, but all were given fair consideration. This was what she had fought for, not the abandonment of wisdom, but the freedom to question it, to build upon it, to transform it into something new. A movement caught her eye, and she saw a group of young beings from various species entering the chamber. They wore the insignia of the newly established Possibility Explorers, teams dedicated to investigating the futures glimpsed in the archive. Among them were humans, Nixilians, quantum youths, and dozens of other species, all working together to turn potential into reality. "You know," Zarthi whispered as a heated debate broke out over the ethics of temporal engineering. "Some of the more traditional members are calling this the Age of Chaos." Maya watched as the discussion evolved, with different perspectives building on each other to create solutions no single species could have devised alone. "They're not entirely wrong," she replied. "But it's not the destructive chaos they feared. It's the chaos of growth, of evolution, of life itself." She thought of her first day as a diplomatic trainee, when she had believed that maintaining peace meant maintaining the status quo. Now she understood that true peace wasn't the absence of change, but the freedom to change in one's own way, at one's own pace. The session continued long into the station's night cycle, as beings from across the galaxy worked together to shape a future that none of them could fully predict. And perhaps that was humanity's greatest gift to the galactic community, not any particular innovation or discovery, but the simple, powerful reminder that the most important question would always be why not. In the depths of Station Alpha, the archive of potential futures continued to flow and shift, its streams of possibility now unfettered by artificial constraints. And in those endless rivers of potential, countless new futures bloomed. Some brilliant, some dark, all possible, all free to be explored by those brave enough to ask the question that had started it all. Why not?